The year, 2015. The place? A small apartment building outside of Philadelphia with a number of recent graduates from university. We jokingly called it Campus Halls 2.0, given just how many of us had moved in there. 5th edition D&D had just come out, and I had grown up reading 3.5 edition rules. I played 4th edition through uni, and I'd just gotten my hands on the 5th Ed Player's Handbook. Now, some friends came up to me and they asked, "Steve, can you run a short campaign over the summer for a few of us? Some have played, but don't really know how to DM. A few of us have never played at all, and would like to see what it's about." I hadn't really been a DM for D&D before, but I thought it'd be fun to give it a try. So I did. I wrote up a 6-session long campaign in a frozen mountain range I called the Southern Spine. And yes, that is an allusion to the Spine of the World mountains and 10 towns. But I made the mountains my own. There were barbarian tribes there, mountains, of course, monsters, of course, and a big bad. An evil ice dragon named Rake, who would be the crowning villain of the campaign. There was Dayton, the half-elf cleric, who didn't know who their god was, and there was Porag. Porag was a half-orc barbarian whose principal sentence was, "Porag charge." And then, of course, there was Laquanda. There's always one player who pulls against type. So, I dropped them in the middle of what I called Beggar's Barrow, a small settlement in the Southern Spine, chiefly known for two things: the huge hollow tree that a one-armed beggar lived inside of, and how this town was the site of the moot. Over the course of the campaign, the town became more and more decorated as the moot approached. Arbors showed up, tents were erected, fire pits and braziers dotted the whole space. Yet my players stumbled into a mystery. The Owl tribe had been eliminated decades ago. That is, until an owl-masked assailant tried to assassinate one of them. What followed was a detective story of them trying to figure out what happened to the Owl tribe. And yes, this was about the time the Court of Owls from the Batman comics were coming out. Now, Session 4 was my absolute favorite one. At the end of Session 3, the party had just gotten out of a dungeon, formerly hidden beneath an ice shelf. They had learned that the Owl tribe had murdered their spirit animal and began worshipping Rake, the ice dragon. And as the session ended, an avalanche, was triggered to try and murder them all. Session 4 was the survival episode. One extended series of survival checks, wisdom saving throws, and constitution saving throws to avoid exhaustion. Exhaustion rules in 5th edition are pretty bad, and they get worse and worse and stack as you go. At one point, they stumble onto a caravan full of frozen people with signs of cannibalism. It was inferred these people could have been Dayton's parents. Rough. By the end of the session, a single party member died of exhaustion. It was such a non-heroic way to die. But something about it was still fitting. They tried so hard, they worked together, they did everything they could, but sometimes it just happens that way. And I'll admit, at the end of it, the person whose character had died had never played before. And so we are at the end of the session, and they were a little sad, and they said, "Oh, well, I had a bunch of fun. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the campaign." And we paused, and we were like, what were you talking about? And they said, "Well, my character died. I'm out of the campaign." And we said, "No, just make a new character. We're not going to kick you out." And they were overjoyed. Our final session was a blast. The moot had finally arrived, and the party had discovered that the Owl Clan had a plot to murder all of the other clan leaders and to reveal Rake as the true queen of the Southern Spine. After a tense fight and a remarkable crit using a ballista, Rake was fended off, flew into the distance. This was the kernel of what would become Portcullis, my homebrew world-building project of nigh on a decade. After all, if there was a southern spine, what's to the north? If there are clans there, could there be clans or tribes to the north also? Now, I grew up reading The Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion, and I knew just how deep the rabbit hole could go if you wanted it to. And I did. I decided this region to the north should be a blisteringly hot desert region, and I called it Kurar. This is loosely based out of a region called Seven Cities in a series called Malazan Book of the Fallen. That same summer, I stumbled onto the question that would form the deepest core of Kurar. What would a setting look like if there was an anti-magic dust inspired by Malazan Book of the Fallen that was as prevalent yet dangerous to get as the spice from Frank Herbert's Doom? What would a society of tribes look like who knew this dust, its use inside and out, its dangers and its benefits? What would imperial interests look like if they were a foreign invader trying to use this material? How far could it be used? Could it be taken very far from the region? How did the region become a desert in the first place? And can I create a world that uses the sort of Pantheon and the tarot card style deck as Malazan Book of the Fallen? After all, I had read and reread and now reread the 10 principal books in the series at least 3 times now. I love their depth and the way in which so many different cultures have emerged, and even how you can trace them if you read carefully. This is the origin story. This is the original question and set of questions that has spun out into what I call Portcullis. I've worked on it on and off ever since, and I've decided now is the time to start sharing it full stop. Now, I'm hoping to get a little bit of feedback on the systems and to put tools in the hands of aspiring players and GMs to start working in this world. And I'm hoping that me doing this whole thing will also force me to spend a little more time working on it, thinking through some of the logic of it, and just sort of generally doing more with this thing that's been in my back pocket for so long. So, thanks for listening. I appreciate it. If you're cool with it, like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube things. The platform is based on engagement, so the more you do something like, comment, subscribe, the more I can do with it. Thanks.